Is it recording? Awesome, cool. Thank you all. My name is Mara. I work in Leadville, Lake County, and we have a food policy coalition, food access coalition, super similar to yours. We completed our food action plan in like June, August of 2023. And so we're a little over a year and a half into implementation. But yeah, so here's the process that got us there. So we spent a couple months, basically how we even started with the food action plan is our coalition was really focused on COVID relief during 2020. Kind of threw all our eggs in that basket. And then once things settled down and different organizations in town had the capacity to do like the hunger relief work, like a food pantry on their own and didn't need the coalition, we had no plan for like what's next. In the past, we had really just been like, ooh, like there's excitement over a community kitchen, or we could use a farm. And there just like really wasn't any, like I said, any long-term plan. And in particular, the work of the coalition, despite the fact that it was this community group that exists over time, whenever like staff or the facilitator would turn over, the work of the coalition would basically like reset. And we just realized, when we're doing these long-term food systems projects, like that's not a sustainable way to operate. So our food plan was really born out of kind of like long-term planning, need to collaborate, etc. As we started doing our food plan, a couple conditions for us in our community. So we had done like 3 food system assessments, one in 2014, 2018, and then 2020. And so we had like a wealth of information around our food system. And we'd also just finished piloting a bunch of programs through COVID. So we knew a lot about what worked and what didn't, what the community wanted. And a big consideration for our community was just like the survey fatigue. And so we really didn't want to like go back out into the community in a large way and start from scratch, especially since we just did that in 2020. After a couple months of deliberation, we decided to pursue a long-term strategic plan. I have it in 2 parts, because planning part 1 is we tried to DIY it, do it ourselves in like 3-4 months. And so we tried that we reviewed a bunch of different plans from outside the community. We reviewed our own food system assessments and started to try to put together, here's what we think should go in it. We did that for like 6 months, and just weren't getting anywhere. I think, as you'll realize, maybe as you start looking at other community plans, there are 1,000 ways to organize your plan. And it was really hard for us to just be like, all right, we're picking that path and that's where we're going. So that was like planning part 1. We tried to do it ourselves. Planning part 2 was with some support from the Health Foundation. They were like, what do you all need, as we were writing our next year's grant? Like, what would you need to like get your work over the finish line? And we're like, we think we need help on our food action plan. So we contracted with this group called Regenerate Change. They're a group based out of Denver, and they have a really like environmental, ecological design approach to their work. And so for us, they brought like a different mindset than what we had represented on the coalition. So we're like, great, that sounds cool. So Regenerate Change came on. They took a look at what we had tried to put together ourselves. They helped us with a couple different additional light touch information gathering processes. So they did some key informant interviews for us with like our Board of County Commissioners, a couple different EDs. They did, let me see if I can click on this. They did like a national policy scan, which, yeah, if this is helpful, I'm happy to like share it. Where they really just looked at like, here's here's what you guys have written down, and here are the things you might not have thought of. And so they just found other mountain communities similar to ours. So I did that. Let's see. And then, yeah, we really just we had a couple public meetings, like 1 or 2, as well as every time we had a coalition meeting, it was like, okay, bring 2 friends. And just went through, it was only like 2-3 months where we really were just like narrowing. So yeah, that kind of got us to the point where we're like, okay, we know what's in the plan. And then it was like back to okay, like what does it look like, how do we format it, which was the really hard part. I really appreciated what Regenerate Change, these were all their ideas. So the first thing they had us discuss as a coalition is who's the core audience, like who's going to be using this plan and what are they going to use it for. And so what we determined was our core audience was the coalition first and foremost, so that we have our long-term planning. The second audience was the organizations within the coalition who might want to use this to write grants or, determine our farm. So they have like a path for the food access programs they're going to offer, et cetera. And then our third audience was like our local government and decision makers like that. They just weren't super heavily involved in food work. And so we really wanted to like write a document that they would be interested in, pay attention to. So yeah, core audience, what the plan does, helps us write grants, gives us a long-term vision, et cetera, et cetera. And then the next step, which I liked as well, was given who we're talking to and what we want them to do with the plan, what values guide the plan. And so we ended up with like healthy families, a thriving economy, and like economic growth. We chose those values in a way that like our decision makers and maybe who it might not really be in the health equity work quite yet. We chose like universal values that would appeal to them. But having the values is actually like a really good gatekeeper for making decisions, like if environmental justice is one of our values, then when we're looking to bring a new grocery store to the community, like we're not gonna pick one that only uses a huge farm and degrades the soil, et cetera, et cetera. And so the values like worked to hopefully appeal to those decision makers, and we use them as like gatekeepers for when we make decisions, which I liked. Cool. And then then we put together an outline. This one was offered by Regenerate Change. It was, what are the different elements to make each strategy or tactic in the plan work? Who do we need to communicate with? What resources do we need? What buy-in, et cetera. And so once we had a narrowed list of the strategies and then kind of like a plan for how those strategies might work, we got into writing the plan. Yeah, that was pretty straightforward process. We originally had, in our first attempt at creating the plan, we had a small subcommittee on our coalition that was like our writing team. By the time we went back and kind of redid the process, there were not many people who had the like time and ability to be on the writing team. So it kind of ended up being me. Maggie helped me go through a bunch of it, and then Regenerate Change helped me go through a bunch of it. And we just did a couple rounds, like here's a draft, coalition, what do you think? Here's a draft, coalition, what do you think? And yeah, what was really nice is like we started out knowing that we want this to be a living document. We don't want to like write it once and that's it. Like every year we wanted to be able to update the plan. As conditions change, as people come in and out of the community. And so it kind of like takes a little bit of the pressure off to like, it has to be perfect because we knew it was going to change as our group did and our community did. Okay, cool. So now we have our plan. The plan, and I'll send it over, ended up being like 46 pages long, and no one's gonna read 46 pages. But again, we really wanted it to be like a guiding document that like overly explained, here is why we made these decisions to put these different strategies into our plan, because it was going to be used like by the coalition facilitator, future coalitions, etc. Yeah, we know nobody's ever going to read that, and so we made a one-page version, and this is really all that we share in the community. If a specific, it's worked out really well, like when a specific project comes up that maybe the coalition isn't working on, but it's in the food action plan, then we can send them like, here's the 4-page chunk on the future of locally owned farm and food enterprises. So we can give them like a smaller chunk that has a lot of context, but is not 46 pages. Oop. Sweet. So yeah, we're in the implementation phase. The way we use our plan is we organize our coalition in project teams based on the strategies and tactics in the plan. A lot of organizations in town use it for grant applications, and that's kind of like a cool double use of it. It's a good way to like bring people into the group, be like, oh, do you want to be an implementing partner of the food action plan? As well as organizations, a lot of funders want to see collaboration in the community, and they're like, cool, we're contributing to this big plan for our entire community. Yeah, we update once a year. We're planning to update once a year, based on what we've learned. And then yeah, like other things, like we recently had our community food event, and we decided to pick like 2 different strategies from our food action plan and kind of center the event on those. And so yeah, really kind of making the plan always alive in the community's minds. Cool. All right. We'll stop sharing.
Are you still recording? No, I have questions.
Oh, okay.
I have many questions. If that's okay.
Totally.
Okay, first one is, how long had your coalition been around when you started working on this plan?
Yeah, so technically we had formed in 2014. Yeah, and like I said, like the facilitator role turned over like every 18 months, and so yeah, like progress was hard for
Yeah.
the first couple of years, and we were new, so
Yeah, cool. What did it look like getting city and county leadership involved in the plan? Because you said that they were written in as one of the key like stakeholders. And what does their involvement look like now? Has that changed at all?
yeah. So the way we got them involved was kind of like, first and foremost, when we decided we were going to do this plan, we did presentations at the BOCC, county commissioners, and the city council. For better, for worse, in Leadville, Lake County, we don't have any government entities that are working on food access. Public health does a little bit, but that's it. And so luckily we are kind of like really filling a gap in the community. So yeah, presentations, and then we also strategically had our Regenerate Change, those consultants, we had them talk to the county commissioners individually, a couple like the Department of Human Services, stuff like that. Yeah, just to kind of get them on board. We did little things like they're on one of the acknowledgement pages as key contributors. And yeah, like I said, our unique situation moving forward is yeah, like again, local government, they come to our coalition meetings, they know about the plan, we update them, we reference it when advocating to them. But yeah, the involvement of the city and county government is mostly like staff again. So Department of Human Services staff is part of our coalition.
Cool. How did y'all choose your universal values?
Yeah, so that was kind of based off of our audience. And so yeah, if we're being honest, like we might have wanted a little bit more radical values, but like we knew that like strategically we know what drives our work and we can reference that as much as we can, but we wanted, we had a lot of like people across the political spectrum in our city and county government, and we wanted everyone to be able to accept the plan, so we like
Mhm.
thriving families, like nobody wants families to be living paycheck to paycheck in poor health, etc. And so we kind of chose it for our audience.
Cool. Um, how do you approach updating your plan? You mentioned that y'all kind of revisit it every year and update it. I imagine you've probably only done that once at this point.
Yeah, so we made like a little tool so our full coalition meets every other month. Our project teams meet monthly. And so we made a tool in the full coalition where we do everyone, like part of our updating section of the agenda, everybody that's at the meeting writes down their touch points for that are linked to different strategies in the plan. And so throughout the year we're recording like what is gaining momentum, like what has changed in federal funding. So we're kind of keeping track as the year goes on. Those little updates, myself as facilitator, once a year, I do just like a sheet that shows each strategy and then what progress is happening on those. And then, yeah, and then that so far in our first year, there wasn't like really anything that we're like, oh gosh, we need to totally overhaul it. Like we ended up realizing our grocery store strategy needed to be tweaked a bit. But so yeah, for the first year, it's stayed pretty steady.
Well, you kind of just answered this, but I'll still ask it in case there's more to add. How does the synergy work between the project teams, the coalition, and your staff?
Yeah. So we kind of went through the like processy pieces. Our project teams have full authority to like make decisions, implement the plan, move things forward, change, etc. And then each project team for the full coalition meetings, they elect a volunteer. That volunteer comes and gives a presentation on this is what we're working on. This is what support we need from the full coalition. These are our challenges, etc. And so yeah, the way our coalition works is the full coalition is kind of like our biggest, most representative group. There's people who are on the full coalition that are not on project teams and vice versa. So yeah, the full coalition kind of helps set the direction for everybody else. And yeah, and then I would say in terms of staff, a lot of it is, like, yeah, you all are a pretty small community too. Like, um, you know, a lot of it is like, hey, I get permission from the coalition of like, I'm spending my time working on this. Are you guys cool with that? Or, there are other situations where it's like, hey, I'm working on this and like, I'm just updating them. And so yeah, we constantly evaluate what do we have capacity to do, what do we have interest, momentum, etc. If that answers it.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. My last question is just like about how many people total do you have working within your nebula of everything?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so we're a small community, which is honestly really nice. Our full coalition, we have like 20 to 30 people who show up. Our project teams are a little bit smaller. They're more like 5 to 12. Um, yeah, and some duplicated, some not. And I guess too, which yeah, maybe you all have talked about one of the things that one of the purposes of the strategic plan as well, the action plan, is creating ways for people to get involved that aren't, coming to every single coalition meeting. If we know, hey, we're about to go advocate to the school board about healthier foods in the schools, the people who know about the plan, we can just shoot them an email and say, hey, would you make public comment? And so it's hopefully helping us, is helping us like have people involved if they don't have time to come to every single meeting type thing.
Those are all my questions.
Great.
Thank you so much, Mara.
Yeah, sorry, that was so long.
No.